I think in lots and lots of ways they are super special. There's not too many places in the world that a potato is not grown and used, and they're incredible. I could talk on about them forever.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. Kerri Farrell and her Spud sister Catherine farm potatoes, source potatoes and sell potatoes to fine dining restaurants, farmers markets and online. Third generation farmers and providores, Kerri loves being a Spud specialist, enjoys the opportunities for connection and education, and truly believes you can never be too enthusiastic about potatoes.
I'm Kerri from Spud Sisters, Kerri Farrell. I work with my sister Catherine Ramage. My dad, Boyd Ramage, is a potato farmer from just out of Ballarat. We have land at Millbrook. We farm potatoes and we supply potatoes to the restaurants, lots of very high-end restaurants and farmers markets, little cafes. We sell online. That's taken off over COVID, during COVID. So that's a great way to supply and send potatoes from Queensland, New South Wales, all around really. And we have a great bit of fun, Catherine and I, selling potatoes and really I'm full of potato guff and I love sharing my knowledge of it to everyone and anyone who wants to listen.
Kerri's whole family has been involved in farming in various ways, from dairy to Christmas trees to spuds. And even though she moved to Melbourne, had her own kids and worked in other areas, it only took a little bit of arm twisting for her to rejoin the family enterprise.
Well, we're a third generation potato farming family. My grandfather was a potato farmer and a dairy farmer, had the first dairy farm the first dairy in Ballarat, and having two sons. My grandpa had two sons and lots of daughters that helped in the dairy and the potato farm. And they, when it came time, of course, to split, as sometimes happens in farming families, then my dad took the potato side and my Uncle Jeff took the dairy side. So that sort of started my dad's love of potatoes. I suppose he always had it. But then my brother came along and four sisters. So Braith had to work pretty hard when he was a young kid, and we kind of Dad outgrew blocks of land that he had potatoes in, and bought bigger blocks of land, and now we kind of have land at Millbrook. My dad's passed on, but my brother's still very much involved in the potatoes. He also grows Christmas trees on our farm as well, and we run the Salvation Army Christmas tree fundraiser each year. So come December, it's all a little bit crazy, crazy mayhem. But we get through it. The family kind of gets through it. But my dad, when I first, being a country girl, when I first came down to Melbourne, then I worked at different reception jobs, etc., and I ran a couple of businesses on myself. Had a little sandwich bar in the city, and then I think my dad actually, well, after I was married and babies came along, the next chapter of new life, my dad said, he came down with a load of potatoes. He was taking spuds into a processing place somewhere down in Melbourne, and he came through and said, "Well, why don't you take these to the girls in the kindergarten, Care? The one that the girls that are in there, they'd love these fresh spuds." And we all laughed at that and said, "No, that's not going to happen, Dad. That's a bit ridiculous." But in actual fact, he kept persisting. And my mum, who has, great business sense as well, she kind of could see that there would be a bit of a future in it as well too. And so they both encouraged me, and having a bit of a crack at running my own business. I thought, well, I would give it a go. So that's what I did, and I think we started with letterbox drops and just gathered and grew a little business from there, just really locally, and then it kind of grew on to supplying other restaurants and little businesses along the way. And then my sister, Kath, I suppose this is 35 years in the making for me, and my sister Catherine decided to have a bit of a job change, and she also thought that she would join me. So then we combined and made Spud Sister. So Catherine, I think, has been with me nearly 20 years, might be 18, 19, 20 years that we've been together, and we've kind of grown a little business, I suppose, with having that farming knowledge, that background of, what's seasonal and what's coming up, and understanding a little bit about what product to suggest, and then it's kind of really grown from there, really.
The Ballarat region has a proud potato history, planting potatoes in late spring to harvest in autumn and through the winter. But supplying all year round means connecting with simpatico growers in other parts of Victoria.
Because in Victoria, like in our district, so in Ballarat, it's a winter growing potato, and for many, many years it used to be the biggest seed producing area of Victoria, in Australia really, where a winter growing area. So we would put potatoes in just before Christmas, depending, I suppose, but if you can get, an early crop in November, then it will be up by late February, early March, depending if all the weather gods are in your favour. And then we would harvest from March through till August, thereabouts, and September they're starting to get a little bit long in their tooth, as far as that starchiness I was telling you about. Sometimes it kind of changes around then, and then that's when I start to look at other areas and other districts that have potatoes that are coming through in and around Warragul and places like that. They have a longer season. They don't get so many frosts like they do in Ballarat, or certainly down on the peninsula as well, which is another part where the potatoes can come from. So in our off-season, what we call our off-season, we would work with the Hawkes farm down on the peninsula. They do fabulous produce, and also the Jones farm. Gordon's a fabulous, he's a great, he's a great person, but he's also a great farmer, and we kind of work in pretty well with one another. We understand how it kind of works, and we try to work in with one another. And Richard Hawkes. So they're when Ballarat district, and when we don't have potatoes, that's where they come from.
Potatoes are humble, but that doesn't mean simple. There are about 5,000 varieties worldwide. Kerri is passionate about educating cooks and chefs about the essential differences between floury and waxy potatoes, and guiding her buyers towards Spud magnificence for every recipe and occasion.
Potatoes are terribly complex little vegetable, and because they do change, because the variance in so many varieties between a good floury potato and a good waxy potato, there's quite a range that runs in between, but really it's only the floury potatoes that will fry and roast. The waxy ones won't do it, and they probably would handle the cool storage a bit more if you had to put them into cool storage, but floury ones don't like the cool storage. Floury potatoes are very starchy, so if on my farmers market, when at the farmers market, Catherine and I have our potatoes kind of in an order, and they go from the starchiest potato, or the driest potato that might be your rosti or your hash browns or your frying potato, the ones that you need to have a bit of crunch, and they are starchy. So they are the ones that will be best roasted as well as frying. Then it kind of works its way to a bit of an all-rounder. So we'll just go back one step. So those starchy potatoes would be like a Yukon Gold or a Maris Piper or a Russet or an Innovator. Those are your starchy potatoes that will do all of that for you. And then not as starchy, it would be a Blue Moon, or Gordon's got a new potato at the moment called a Merlot. Then a Sebago. They're kind of an all-round potato. They've got, like for making gnocchi, they've got a little bit of body to them. They're not as floury, not as fluffy. Then, of course, you move on to waxier potatoes, so lighter, not too super dense, is a Dutch cream. Your Dutch cream ones are waxy, and then your Nicola is waxy, but it's a firmer waxy. So it's also like maybe the firmest or the waxiest or creamiest, if you want to put it like that too. But they don't crisp up. They're not, they're very, very hard to crisp up. To get a waxy potato to crisp up, you would, have to part boil it, and it'd have to be, put into a very, very hot oven and kind of tossed in your oil and then back in. There's a lot of fluffing around to get a waxy potato to crisp up.
Spud Sisters supply many of Melbourne's best restaurants and chefs. Not only do they share the expertise gleaned over long careers, but they also respond to chefs' particular needs and desires, building up trusting relationships through collaboration and ongoing conversation.
It's been such a lovely journey, really, being able to offer our expertise and being able to tweak our expertise. Kath and I have got some great restaurants that we deal with, and I think that from Atticus to Carlton Wine Room and Shannon Bent, the Cash, the Jacques Ramon's, all of the Stokehouse, all the way through COVID. The boys from the Stokehouse came down really, religiously to the farmers market and tried everything on the table and kind of tweaked recipes, and the same with Jacques too. They all of the chefs, when they could, kind of came down and went through different varieties for the farmers market. But the lovely thing about working with, specialty restaurants is that you get to show your expertise and they get to trust you. When, like, for instance, I think some chefs think, it's only because it's been what they've been told, they will get confused between waxy and floury potatoes, and they've been told by other people that's a waxy and that's a floury. In actual fact, it's quite the reverse. So just being able to let them know which ones are in actual fact a floury, and just because it's a deep yellow potato like our Andean Sunrise at the moment, by all means it should look like as if it's a waxy potato, because it's deep and golden and it's very yellow, and sometimes the waxy potatoes are like that, but it's not. It's very floury, it's very fluffy, silky, crispy, crunchy, and if you tried to boil it to make a potato salad, it's just going to make mush.
As new restaurants and cuisines come to the fore, there's an interest in less common varieties of potato. Peruvian restaurants such as Pastuso have inspired the Spud Sisters to plant exciting varieties that haven't been seen locally before.
And I have a lot of Peruvian restaurants that are now showing a lot of interest in these deep coloured potatoes, and they are the Andean Sunrises originally. The seed would have originally come from the Andes, and there's a Mayan Twilight and a Peruvian Gold, quite a lot of them, like Pastuso, the new Peruvian restaurant that's in the city. They're taking a lot of different coloured potatoes, and there is a lot of Peruvian restaurants who are showing an interest in it. So that's kind of, I suppose, the next thing for Spud Sisters is to start to plant some just sort of little small crops of interesting, unique little potatoes. And that's the thing, you work with these beautiful, fabulous restaurants that challenge you as well. They want something new, something different, something that's sort of coming from overseas as a new trend on different things. And all of these potatoes, these new varieties that chefs are wanting, and I get a lot of pleasure out of then being able to, well, not only show and showcase different potatoes that are interesting and new, but also to help to educate. It's just trying to work with what your high-level chefs need and just tweaking it and working out, what will, with the ideas that they've got, what potatoes will best suit, and then the best potatoes that will suit going forward, because, they do change in their starches, and so you've got to be one step ahead of the punch.
Going direct to consumer is an important part of Kerri's business. Farmers markets aren't just a source of income, they're a source of friendship and crucial feedback on how her potatoes are faring in people's kitchens.
We do a lot of farmers markets, kind of down in the southern end of town, I suppose, mainly. But, a bit of a good spread of farmers markets, and we get great feedback straight away from your farmers markets customers, and that's a really great passion of mine. I really love the farmers markets. They are all the way through COVID. They were such a joy to be able to speak to people, and we've made some very good friends, long friends, through the farmers markets. And that's, you, from week to week, you get told pretty quickly what's doing the best thing in the roasting or the frying or the mashing. I will see. I will see people coming that I know. The husband's been sent out to pick up the potatoes, and he'll say to me, "Oh, Sandy's just told me to come and get potatoes. You'll know which one it is that she wants." And I do. We know which one that people will want, and we'll have them kind of sorted, and away they'll go. Or sometimes sometimes because we do an awful lot of chatting, Catherine and I and the girls, when we're at the table, sometimes I'll forget what side of the table that it was. I forget now. You told me it was a this, that, and the other. I say no, it's this one down here that you had for you had that one for you're going to make some rosti, and you made that for oh yes, that's what it was. It was the Maris piper for the rosti. Oh, they were sensational. Well, we have a lot of customers that seek us out that are from Ireland and from England, and parts Scottish, because there's not a lot of really lovely floury potatoes that you can get off the shelf or in a supermarket, and they love floury potatoes. So that's the thing that would remind them most of home is an Irish person and a floury potato. My mother-in-law was Irish, so she would say to me, "Kerri, go out and get me the flouriest potatoes that you've got, and I'll whip you up some roast potatoes." And she was just wonderful. She would roast the potatoes. So she would parboil the flouriest potatoes that I had, and then she would take them out into the night air where it was really cold, and she'd flip them, and there would be these billows of steam that would escape from the pot, and she would just make the most loveliest, crunchiest, fluffiest potatoes from some kind of little Spud whispering going on in the Irish camp, I think, somehow or another down the track, but they were just heaven.
How does a potato specialist use her spuds? Kerri lets us into some Spud sister secrets and even some family controversies.
I make a pretty good potato salad, really, although one of my favourite ingredients is that I used to get from the supermarket was Fountain's sweet mustard. They don't make it anymore, so I've got to kind of try and invent my own little sweet mustard, but I do make a pretty mean potato salad, and I also, there's a bit of a running challenge between my sons and I as to who can make the best roast potato. We've all kind of keep tweaking it to see who can do the better one. I think actually my son's beating me at the moment. I'm going to have to smarten my act up a little bit, but it's hard to beat roast potatoes with duck fat in them if you can kind of sneak a little bit of. There again, see, that's a controversy, because duck fat really is a natural fat, and you really don't need a lot of it. Other oils and things that you have to sometimes add a little bit more, but you can just really just melt duck fat and just brush it over with rosemary and garlic over the top of your King Edwards or your Maris pipers or beautiful Andean sunrise potatoes, and they would be I never ever have a problem with them disappearing out off the rack. There's a lot of boys that peer down the back of my oven saying, "Is there any more spuds, Mum?" Like as if the oven's eaten the spuds. No, you've just devoured 3 trays. There's no more spuds.
Potatoes are a staple around the world. Why do they keep Kerri interested and passionate?
I think in lots and lots of ways they are super special. There's not too many places in the world that a potato is not grown and used, and people hardly even know that they use so many potatoes. So when you ask, we don't use so many potatoes, but when you think about what they actually do and consume, potatoes is such a basic vegetable all the way throughout the world, and all the way throughout the world, people have their own special little dishes, and so many of them have got potatoes in them. If you think of a heartwarming recipe that has that reminds you of something or reminds you of home, nearly all of them have got potatoes in them. There's so many nationalities of people that I've spoken to throughout my Spud sister journey that I hope one day that I get to write a recipe book of of a Russian potato salad and a German potato salad, and they've all got their own little quirks on a potato salad, and I love it. I love that it's just a little bit different, and if you lined them all up together, you'd have a book full, I'm sure of it. But potatoes are amazingly nutritious. A lot of people sort of think to themselves that they are fattening, and it's not so. It's not so. There's no fat in potatoes at all. They're highly nutritious. Their satiety rate keeps you fuller longer than pasta and rice does. It's got a very high satiety rate, and they've got the starches in the potato. Well, we're now learning how good and how valuable that starches are in your gut. So they're incredible. I could talk on about them forever. So it'd probably bore the pants off you, to be honest with you.
They're nutritious, versatile, and beloved by home cooks and chefs alike. They've also enabled Kerri Farrell to stay connected to the land and her family's heritage and build rich and warm connections with keen home cooks and some of Australia's best chefs. No wonder she's so happy to be a Spud sister. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.